It is. Long last. Long last. How long have I been waiting? It's finally here. Hi, and welcome to the Law of Talos Explained, episode 3.5. In this episode, I will finish up any details left about Carl involving the Law of Talos. But most importantly, I will discuss a hidden piece of lore that has remained elusive to me all this time. First, let's start with something basic. Clymer and Jackie. You may have noticed these two in the comics, especially in Carl's storyline. They are from the Castle of Nations, just like Carl, but they are not contestants in the Law of Talos. Instead, they serve as a means to help out move the plot, or to at least make it more interesting. Clymer was the original OC of Unknown Person that inspired the creation of the Castle of Nations universe. His creation was for the purpose of entering the End Zone competition. He was successful in winning the competition, and it's because of this that he is chosen to help out retrieve Carl in the Law of Talos. There's a lot more that can be said about Clymer, but I will have to keep that information until the day we move to the End Zone competition. However, if you would like to skip ahead of me, then I will leave you a link in the description to Unknown Person's DeviantArt, so you may read and watch his comics and animations on Clymer's adventures. Unlike Clymer, Jackie is the new character from the Castle of Nations that was introduced in the Carl storyline. Not much can be said about Jackie due to lack of lore, but it's safe to say that he is a trusted individual in the Castle of Nations. During the intro to Carl's story, we see Carl asking Jackie for a ride to the competition, and afterwards we see the Castle of Nations itself asking Jackie to pick someone to go and help him retrieve Carl. This lets us know that Jackie is some kind of manager in the abandoned park of the Castle of Nations, and is trusted with both simple and important tasks like keeping track of the dragons, which are used for transportation, and being able to handpick his own party to go hunt down any rogue residents of the Castle of Nations. Now that we have those two out of the way, it's time to talk about someone more mysterious and elusive. Arma. As most of us already know, Arma is a crow that helps out Carl in his fights in the Law of Talos. In Carl's character sheet, it states,
Arma is a silent, emotionless little cement statue who has a very unique skill. It's a shapeshifter. For the price of some amount of energy, it can transform itself into many objects. Working with Carl, it usually takes the form of bladed weapons. Arma doesn't say a single word, but Carl is always talking to the crow, and he always refers to Arma as a she.
First, let's talk about the possibility that Arma is a part of Carl. For starters, Arma always knows what Carl wants her to do at all times, without Carl giving her commands. You could argue he trained her to do those things, but based on what we have seen in their fights, Arma and Carl always adapt quickly to their scenarios without openly speaking to each other, and in mere seconds no less. The only way these two could pull off their stunts is if they had some kind of symbiotic relationship. The second piece of evidence is that Carl hates just about anything else that moves that is not him. While he likes to talk about his hatred for humans, it's clear that it's not exclusive to other things like robots or other residents of the Castle of Nations. So why and how is he friends with this bird? As far as we can see, the only one that Carl doesn't hate is himself, so it would make sense if Arma is a part of him, which is why he is more welcoming to her than others. Another thing to point out is that whenever a Castle of Nations character is talking about Carl or to Carl, they never really acknowledge Arma as an individual. This is strange because Arma also comes from the Castle of Nations, so surely she too would have an infamous reputation like Carl. Yet, not even the Castle of Nations itself acknowledges her. Even when Clymer and Jackie were looking for Carl, they never once mentioned Arma. And yet, we know that they know about Arma because Carl never attempts to hide her from others. She is always in full view next to Carl. So why don't they acknowledge her? Well, I believe the reason for this is because they consider Arma a part of Carl, and therefore do not have to refer to her as an individual, reinforcing the idea that Carl and Arma are technically one entity. Now let's talk about how Arma could have been born and when. Thanks to the comics, we know that Arma was not around during the early years of the Castle of Nations. We also know that she was not around when Carl was friends with Rachel, and we also know that she was not around during the moment that Carl made his first human kill. We only see her after these events with no explanation. So, what are my theories on this part? Well, first I will tell you what I think happened, and then I will present my evidence. I believe that at one point in time during Carl's friendship with Rachel, something really bad happened. This event broke their friendship and it triggered Carl's sociopathic tendencies. Soon after, Carl killed Rachel and possibly someone else. After the killing, he went to talk to the Castle of Nations, which would be one of the flashbacks we see in the comics. After all of this, he would reflect on his newfound hatred for humans and decided to no longer associate himself with them. This would also push him to remove his title as a pirate and force him to change his image. So he proceeded to remove his eye patch. The only problem being is that the eye patch is painted into his face, hence why he had to scratch it off and why he has a scar on his face. He also fixed his right hand, but with a different material, and not the original parts that fell off from him during the fight with Rachel, or possibly the other person. During his madness, he made a crow-cement statue using pieces of his right hand that had fallen off, the eye patch he scratched off, and Rachel's blood to paint the eyes. Whether he knew this would happen or not is unknown to me, but nevertheless, the statue came to life, and the rest is history. But we are not done yet. Now I would like to talk about the potential symbolism behind Arma and how it might hint us to Rachel's death. Before Carl started his fight with the professor began to speak a poem.
Look, a pigeon.
In there stepped the stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore.
Nevermore.
The poem is by an author named Edgar Allan Poe, and the poem being told is called The Raven. This poem is about a man who misses his departed wife. He even contemplated on the idea of the afterlife in hopes that he can truly see his wife once again. However, his thoughts are interrupted by a crow that comes into his house and repeats the words, "Nevermore." Then the man becomes angry with the crow because he thinks that the crow is telling him that he will never see his loved one ever again. So when we see the professor who is about to finish the poem, Carl immediately interrupts him by finishing the poem where the raven says, "Nevermore." This is obviously a reference, and it signals to the viewers that Carl is about to kill either Annie or the professor. In the non-canon version, Carl kills the professor, while in the canon ending, he kills Annie. It also makes sense that Carl would be able to finish the poem for the professor because Carl is known to like literature despite not liking humans. And it's not surprising that Carl would be a fan of Edgar Allan Poe. You see, Edgar was a troubled human. Every woman he ever loved, including relatives, all died in similar circumstances, and Edgar became full of despair, which is why he went on to create Gothic literature. Almost all of his most popular poems are about tragedies and horrors towards the protagonist. It's no surprise that Carl, out of all people, would be into seeing humans suffer. However, I also think that this Raven reference also hints at what Carl already did. If Carl really did kill Rachel and created Arma with her blood, then it makes sense that Arma is a crow. Arma is Carl's Raven. She is a reminder to Carl that he will never see the one he loved ever again. I don't know if Carl specifically made her a crow for this reference, but I definitely think that this was the symbolism Unknown Person was going for. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of our episode.
Hey, stop!
Hold up, viewers! I almost forgot about something. The comments section. So, I know that I'm extremely late to the party, but I still would like to address some of the comments you guys left over the years. For starters, let's talk about the mistake. This was posted by a user named Kane Reval.
I kinda wish you had speculated at least on the ongoing theme of the same mistake, as it is touched upon at least twice in the animation and even has a piece of art made by a known person dedicated to it. I honestly think that Carl didn't kill Rachel, but I think he tried to. In some of the flashbacks during the final fight between Professor Ginger, you can see glimpses of a second person. Someone who wears the same coat as Carl in the tournament, shooting Carl's arm off. Possibly Rachel's boyfriend coming to her defense. Carl probably killed him and couldn't pursue Rachel because she ran out of the castle's limits, causing him to lose his energy, leading to her getting away, which is why he mentions making the same mistake again in episode 2. Just a thought, I can only speculate on this part, but I like the idea.
Excellent point, Kane. A few times in the animation, we see Carl state something about the same mistake right after he begins to suffer from lack of magical energy. This is clearly a reference to a piece of history in the Castle of Nations storyline that has not been created yet. But, based on what we see, we can conclude that Carl has been in this type of problem before. The problem specifically being him running out of energy in the middle of something important that may be related to fighting. So, I will keep my hopes up that maybe Rachel is still alive and well. Now, Dank M3M3 says,
"Is it true that Love Towers was rigged from the start?"
As I do research on the competition, it has come to my attention that there was some controversy with the judges. But I still don't have enough information to properly say what happened. What I can say is that the winners of the competition were not incompetent in their work, and I have my own theories as to why they were picked as the winners. But that is for another time. If you like this episode, or this series, please subscribe and like or tell a friend. Until next time.